just as we close out this hearing, we don't do this, but Ms. Clayton, is there a question that we did not ask? Is there a question that should be asked? Is there something that you want to know?
Thank you. My question is, why is it that it's only once a year that the buildings or the apartments are inspected? Me, personally, I think they should be inspected at least 3 times a year.
Anybody?
It's a great question to ask, and I think that we would all say that I think we are in lots of buildings multiple times. I think that in the case of this building, certainly for our inspections, we didn't have any heat complaints. And so there's also sort of a disconnect, I think, on some level between the lived experience of the people in the building and what is showing up on the inspection reports. And I think that's a complicated issue to tackle about the efficacy or the what's required in the inspections. If we did them more, would we get more? If we still sort of got the same outcome, we're not in the right place. So I think it's a great question to ask. I don't necessarily have an answer about doing it more as much as to sort of acknowledge that I think that there's a little bit of a disconnect in what we see when we go out there and what's actually happening, and we have to get at the root of that. And I also think it goes back to investment in older housing stock, and we just have to be making sure that we're making capital investments in multifamily buildings occupied by low-income households, by seniors, by children, by every vulnerable population we have in this city, to make sure that they're living in safe, warm apartments. It's essential, and it's a big ask of the federal government and for state and locals to do that kind of investment, but it's really at a crisis point, and we need it.
Thank you, Ms. Clayton.
I think I'd just second that, actually, and say that I think we had a good takeaway from this hearing, which is to meet with our federal and state partners, because the additional data, especially from the residents, can make a difference in how often we inspect a building.
And if I can just close out with this, we had the same experience. We have a lot of visits to buildings, a lot of inspections. You heard the numbers. They're huge, 620,000 violations, etc. But then we look at the history of a particular building, and we find that there were 10, 12 heat complaints, and then this fire happens. And so I think there's an element here that is the tenant human element of maybe a fear of complaining for fear of reprisal that we're going to have to really deal with. And that's an issue for us to take up as we go forward.
Thank you very much, Ms. Clayton, and thank you for raising that issue. You're the person that is most impacted by the questions and the answers and the actions that are forthcoming. I'd like to thank all of you, all of the witnesses, for your testimony today. And without objection, all members will have 5 legislative days within which to submit additional written questions for the witnesses to the chair, which will be forwarded to the witnesses for this purpose. And I would like to ask the witnesses to please respond as promptly as possible. And without objection, all members will have 5 legislative days within which to submit extraneous materials to the chair for inclusion in the records. We're going to take a 5-minute recess before the next panel, which is a panel of the U.S. Housing and Development Department, who will be here. And let me thank all of the members who are on the virtual screen, and if you're able to stay, we appreciate it. But we'll take 5 minutes to change witnesses. Thank you.